Hello, everybody. Sorry, Lisa, I think I just muted you by accident. Um, Hopefully everybody can see my screen. Keandra is sick tonight, and our regular presenter also is sick with COVID tonight. Chad Williams was going to be here for the West North Avenue Development Authority, and he is unable to make it as well. But we will go through our board reports, and possibly this will just be a relatively short meeting. So I'm going to go through the slideshow. If anybody can't see it, or if anybody can't hear me, just raise your hand or call out or whatever. So welcome to everybody. This is our Reservoir Hill Association meeting for July. We're going to go through the board reports and any discussion and announcements that are left over. And we'll start, well, we're not starting with Keandra because she's sick. So is anybody on the call that has any info on any of these updates on any of these items, sorry? Board members?
To chat. I don't know if you want me, because that was one of the things that we was going to include in the open discussion, but
Okay.
I can talk about the recent construction notification from Amtrak,
Mhm.
if you'd like me to discuss it here.
Sure.
Okay, so I don't know. I think it's the first time Amtrak has left a notification on our door. I should have sent it over, but you should have gotten a little notice on your door. I don't know if that included other neighborhoods, not other neighborhoods, but other streets, Madison, or if it included all what other streets in this community, because Amtrak, of course, doesn't have that information on their website. But in case you didn't receive it, it's basically saying that they're going to be doing some construction work in a parking lot of 2000 Linden Avenue from July 8th through the July 23rd. And it says they're going to be conducting soil borings. And this was left, I think, sometime over the 4th of July holiday. I don't know, remember exactly what date. But this is the first notification that we've received on our doors, which is kind of consistent with Section 106. I know there's an upcoming Amtrak meeting that I guess the first one is virtual and the second one is in person. So if you have any specific questions about it, I think we can maybe bring them up there at the meeting. But I understand Amtrak isn't making a presentation, so it's going to be one of these open house things. But anyway, so they expect increased noise and dust in the area during this period, and that there may be traffic modifications to accommodate the construction vehicles and equipment. I don't think it started as of yet, but it is an issue that we will be raising with the law clinics about in terms of, what we had requested is that there be no action or activity taken during the period that we have the civil rights complaint pending. Of course, we haven't received a response on that, but that's also one of the things that I was going to talk about during the open portion of the meeting, related to the investigation. But in any event, if anyone needs a copy of this, I'm happy to email it. Just put a note in the chat and I'll make sure that I get a copy of it to you if you haven't received it, because again, we don't know who all received this notification. And I think the rest of the information regarding the Community Law Center and Amtrak I can bring up during the open section of the meeting.
And remind us, Lisa, you're on which street?
I'm
Utah?
on Utah
Okay.
Place.
Gotcha.
And I, from what I understand, I know Keandra received a notification, but I just can't say, for example, on Linden, whether they received it. I don't want to assume that they did, but I'm wondering if the folks on Madison got a copy of that, because they don't really consider Madison as part of the affected community. So again, this is the closest we've gotten to adhering to the law, but it's still not there.
Well, if anybody who's in the meeting has received it, if you want to put something in the chat, saying what block you're on and that you received the notice, that would be great. Or email the board. So, all right.
Hey, Lisa, do you know the date of that upcoming Amtrak meeting?
I want to say it's the 11th, but I'm not, don't hold me to that. I'm going to check my emails really quickly. It's 2 meetings that they have scheduled, and I'll tell you in just, let's see if I can open up my.
Lisa, can you actually add it to the chat?
The or you're just saying just add that note, whatever I find out.
Yeah, just add whatever the date is in the chat,
Okay.
and I will transfer it over to our calendar as well.
Okay, I'll do that
Thank
right
you.
now. Or no, I'll do that and send it over.
Okay. Thanks.
Back to you, Chad.
Thanks, Lisa. We're like a newscast team now. Jerika, I think you're on the call. I'm not sure if you're able to speak right now, but if you are, if you want to make a quick report.
Yeah, I'm here. I haven't see, did I attend anything? No, I don't think I attended any meetings other than the Upton. I had some stuff that they doing down in more of the Upton community. But no, I don't have anything to report.
All right. And I'm up next with the treasurer's report. Our current ledger balance right now is $10,616.77. This is an update for the year to date through July 9th, which is today. From the beginning of the year, we've had total income of a little over $4,400. And total expenses of a little over $6,100. We are currently waiting on a reimbursement from Healthy Neighborhoods for the garden and home tour. And I think we might be waiting on 1 or 2 other reimbursements for that. But that's for the year up to this point, we are about $1,700 below our income right now. That should go into the positive once we get the reimbursements for the garden and home tour stuff. As always, if you have any questions about the finances, email me at treasurer@reservoirhillassociation.org. There's a QR code on the screen if you want to pay for your dues, which are $12 a year, $1 a month, through PayPal, or you can write a check and drop that off. Just contact me for information on that. There's also a link here for the spreadsheet with the monthly reports. I'm going to try to see if we can get that sent out to the listserv, so you can just bookmark it, and I'm updating that on a rolling basis with our monthly income and expenses. Are there any questions for me right now from anybody? Right. Our architecture and historic preservation seat is currently vacant, but I don't know if anybody is on the call. Any of the board members have updates on either of these items. I think Keandra or somebody added these in here.
If I could just weigh in, these are 2 of the things that we talked about, Keandra and I, regarding Druid Park, Lake Drive. Do you want me to? I guess I could talk about it now.
Yeah.
One of the things that we were talking about, I think recently Keandra had an opportunity to walk along on Druid Park Lake Drive. And I don't have the photographs with me to share, but a lot of the area had historic properties or status. Again, with Section 106, if you're receiving any sort of federal funding, you should be adhering to determine that there were changes made to properties or not properties, but like bricks, for example, that have a historic significance. And Section 106 was not taken into consideration for those items. I mean, there's a specific protocol if you're dealing with a historic neighborhood. Keandra mentioned, for example, that some of the bricks were numbered bricks, okay? And these aren't simply on parts of the sidewalk. These are not bricks that you can just easily replace. These are protected, and before you can do anything with them, you have to consult with the affected communities that are going to be adversely impacted. And that has not happened at all with respect to that area of our neighborhood. And apparently, I've seen some pictures, and there was in fact an agreement, I understand, from the people who were involved in creating that area, where you have to, where the city of Baltimore agreed to take care of, this historic area. And of course, that doesn't involve, just tearing it apart without taking the required preservation steps. Like these bricks, gorgeous, this area, if it's properly maintained, has the ability to be gorgeous again. And the historical significance cannot be downplayed. And so those are some concerns that we expect to be addressing with the city in the very near future, because we're concerned about some of the steps that they're taking where they're completely ignoring their responsibilities in terms of Section 106 and their requirement to actually preserve the historic artifacts and items that make up this incredible neighborhood. So I know that that's going to be coming up as well. Also, with respect to the BP tunnel project, we are, there's an investigation that's ongoing, and we expect, for example, that Keandra and our Dr. Colors will be, amongst the people who will be interviewed. So far, there hasn't been any outreach about that. And so we are trying to, I think we're going to be communicating with Department of Transportation regarding, where they are in that process, because there can't be any investigation that could be completed without the input of this neighborhood. So we expect that there will be, additional people that will be interviewed, but at a minimum, we know that the investigation should include interviews with Keandra and Dr. Colors. And so as soon as we get an update for it, and these things take, generally there's a federal investigation, it could take years. They're not done quickly. And that's one of the most frustrating things about that whole process. But, you know, it has to be thorough, and it involves requesting documents. It's a whole production. So, just to let you know, and we've requested that they stop construction activity during the course of that. There's been no response, but we will be following up with them. And that's all I have for those two.
Thanks. Turn it over to Janae, our events committee chair.
Hello, everyone.
Janae, we lost you. Are you muted?
But I do have a quick review. So our meeting for June was just a little bit ago, June 27th. It is the fourth Thursday of every month. And at that meeting, we just did a quick debrief for the 2024 Garden and Home Tour. A big thank you to all of our folks that participated, all of our volunteers, our exhibitors, our vendors, and of course, our silver sponsors. We reviewed and started the process of doing our start, stop, continue to gather feedback and lessons learned so that we can start incorporating that information and those pearls into our 2025 planning. We also transitioned to the events for the remainder of 2024. So we have quite a few things that we were discussing. We were kind of chatting about the possibility of doing a movie night in September. We also wanted to talk about pulling through on our event that we started last year, where we created a nice little Halloween map and invited neighbors to come out and meet other neighbors. We also have our November annual event that we're going to be engaging in. And then we also talked about the possibility of doing a December holiday event in the neighborhood. So there are ample opportunities for folks to volunteer for these different events. And come out, get to know your neighbor, etc. And then before you know it, it'll be January 2025. And the Garden and Home Tour, in my mind, for 2025 is right around the corner. So we have plenty of work to do. And we of course can use all hands. We have a few other events that are not necessarily our events, but events that we support from other neighborhoods. So please keep track and visit our calendar on Reservoir Hill Association.org, where we try and post all activities that we feel like the neighborhood would be interested in. And then come on out to our next meeting, which is set for the 25th of July, 2024. And if you want to know more, we'll be happy to share it with you then. And I'm going to turn it back over to you, Chet, if there's no questions.
Yep, if there's no questions, keep going. Lauren Mohammed, are you on the call, Lauren? Lauren is our Green Committee Coordinator. I don't
see her.
Well, if she's not on the call, I do just have one event that I wanted to remind everyone of. We have a Green Up Cleanup that is scheduled for August the 3rd. So we'll be coordinating to send more information out. But, it's a great opportunity to come out, meet neighbors, beautify our beautiful blocks, and more to follow on that. So again, pop on over to the events calendar, and all of that information is there, and we'll add details as the day gets closer.
And also, for those who are not aware, that is the weekend of Artscape, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, August 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. So just be aware of that. It probably impacts folks on the southeastern side of the neighborhood more than anybody else, but sometimes there are parking issues with that. Daryl, are you on the call?
Good evening, everyone. I'm going to give a quick report from our last meeting. We primarily spoke about messaging our our main vehicle for messaging is our social media accounts, particularly Facebook, Instagram, X, formerly known as Twitter, and Nextdoor. Our primary messaging is our standing committees and our proposed schedule for messaging is a 7-3-1 schedule, with messaging going out 7 days before, 3 days, and day of. Our secondary messaging is messaging that we do for our partners and collaborators. We message both their meetings as well as their events. Our tertiary messaging includes local government agencies, nonprofits, private agencies, and individuals, whomever contributes to the Reservoir Hill community. We look to pass along that information and resources within our community. So we message with for those organizations as well. We discussed file nomenclature, which is may possibly seem insignificant, but we are at a point where our naming system allows you to know everything about the event by seeing the file name. So that naming is the organization first, the event, and then the date and a dot and the time in military time. So if you see a file, say that you are one of the volunteers that are a part of a committee that needs marketing to do messaging. If you create a flyer and you name that flyer with that nomenclature, then anybody in marketing will know when the event is, and will be able to put that information into their own message simply by looking at the file. Then after the file nomenclature discussion, we then talked about content calendar, which is our content calendar is all the events from primary, secondary, and tertiary messaging in one place. And it is a Google document with each entry being similar in the nomenclature as the file, with the addition of mentioning the frequency of the event in particular. So say events just said that it is the fourth Thursday, then we would add that that information will be available in the content calendar. And finally, we discussed our newsletter and where we wanted to go, and we put out our June newsletter very late in the month, but it was a recap of the garden home tour, as well as the fish fry, and Juneteenth were covered in our newsletter. If you didn't see our newsletter, check your inbox and look at it. The newsletter is entitled "On Our Hill." You'll see the R for Reservoir and Hill in caps. Hat tip to Melda for that. Our next meeting is 18 July. There we will discuss particular roles that are available in the marketing committee, as well as some other items that we will solidify so that we can get Chet a budget when we need what marketing needs in order to get our messaging out, especially having just experienced the garden home tour, it was fresh on our minds, the amount of messaging that we did, and also the amount of messaging that we could do and what we want to do in the future. That requires us to get ahead of the game and to get that have that budget so that we can request those funds in a timely manner. If there is any questions, feel free to ask at this time. I will turn it back over to Chet. Again, the next meeting is 18 July. Thank you all.
Thank you, Daryl. I just want to point out the calendar on the website. If you go there on the Reservoir Hill Association.org website, there's a calendar link there, and there are tons of events linked showing up in the calendar, and you can subscribe to the calendar. So do that if you'd like. Also subscribe to, like, the Instagram page, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Try to, if you're on social media, like and subscribe to that kind of stuff. It helps boost the, I forget what the word is, but it boosts the posts a little bit. I believe Arlen is also out of town or not able to attend tonight. Does anybody have any PDC updates that they'd like to share? All right, I'll turn it over to Orlando for Safety and Security Committee.
Good evening, everyone. Our report for today in Reservoir Hill is that we had 1 weapon discharge, 2 robberies, 2 auto larceny, and 3 stolen auto. The Western District has recovered 7 semi-automatic weapons, 1 revolver, 3 hatchet. They are doing their best in recovering all these illegal weapons off the street. We did not have a meeting last month due to scheduling issue, but the Western District will be having the meeting next Tuesday for this month, for July. That's all I have to report. Any questions? Okay, that's it. Thank you, Chet.
Do you have anything about the National Night Out you want to share, or just basically the information?
Basically, they having a national night out. They're collecting donation, and that's basically it.
Thank you. All right, so now we're moving in our discussion section, which was supposed to be a little bit of stuff on the West North Avenue Development Authority, but unfortunately Chad Williams is sick with COVID. So so I'm going to open it up for general discussion of items. Lisa, if there, I think you have some lists of things from the agenda if you want to talk about that.
Thank you, Chad. The first is the COVID surge. Just want to give a general alert to everyone that there is, in fact, a COVID surge that's ongoing. We're really lucky because in the state of Maryland, generally people are a significant number of people will mask up in indoor spaces. So I can generally gauge if there's a surge by, seeing more people in like the grocery store wearing mask. Unlike if, I go to my hometown in Alabama, I'm not likely to see it. So we're lucky, but it is here. And in the past, they've told us that during the summer months, you're likely to see a decrease and then an increase in the fall. We're seeing it now. So, just be careful, be mindful, because it's happening. And so we just want to let everyone know about that. The other thing, okay, so I mentioned the information about the Amtrak and the construction notification. So I did have an opportunity to go look at my email, and July 22nd, 2024, from 6 to 7:30, they have a virtual meeting option. That's a Monday. And then on Wednesday, July 24th, 2024, from 6 to 7:30. And by the way, both meetings are from 6 to 7:30. There is an in-person open house. There won't be a presentation. For anybody that's been to these events, they don't really take questions, and they don't want to be on the record for anything that they say about the project. So I'm not sure how that's going to work. So I would suggest if you could plan maybe to go to both meetings, and certainly go to the Monday meeting on the 22nd, because that's virtual. So, you know, maybe they'll take questions there. You just don't know. I don't know what the open house is, if it's going to be. In the past, it's just been, you know, they'll have posters and things. They're so-called experts will be in attendance, but they generally aren't going to be willing to answer any questions. So if you have questions, I'd highly recommend that you plan on attending the virtual option at a minimum on the 22nd of this month. So that was one thing. And then I talked about already the Druid Hill Park Drive 106 concerns. Thank you, Kathy, regarding the meeting. And I think we could put this up on the website. Maybe, I know it's on Eventbrite under Amtrak, but you know, for anybody who needs that, because it's got the link information, and it should also be on Amtrak's website. But I haven't gone to check, so I can't confirm whether it is or not. But I think we'll be able to put it up on, I think Kathy's got it on RAT's website. And then we'll certainly put it up on the RHA website, just so that you can keep track and also have the necessary links to participate. I think they require you to, you know, go through Eventbrite. So it's got like, you know, you request a ticket, but they don't monitor it really. So I'm just gonna, you know, you could just show up and there's not gonna be a problem, because they don't really track that kind or require a ticket when you go in. Okay, so another thing that we wanted to talk about was the utility of the 311 calls. And it's often been brought to our attention that people in the community don't necessarily want to call on their neighbors. And so I wanted to bring up, you know, our situation at 2331 Utah, and also issues that were raised regarding at the last general meeting for 2414 Callow Avenue. Just from my personal experience, I would never want anyone to have to endure the headache and the trials that we have to with respect to our house. I recently got a citation for work that was done on the property that was done before we purchased the property, and which Department of Housing and Community Development were on notice of. And the way they were on notice is because, fortunately, my neighbors, before they were my neighbors, contacted 311 and put the calls in. And I just want to tell you that if the only documents I had to go into court with were those records, those summaries from where the neighbors called in. Those, if I had to choose, those are the documents that I'm going to go in with, because it shows notice and it shows the issues that were raised. If I don't have those documents, it's a much harder case to prove. But those documents are life savings, okay? And I don't mean that lightly. I mean, it's a big deal. For example, I mentioned, I think to Mr. Rolando, that my issue with the property on 2414 Callow Avenue is the fact that their developers in this community will do the work, not up to code, and will not request the proper permits. And the way they get around that is they will request a waiver after they've done the work that wasn't up to code. And when I was talking to Mr. Rolando about 2414 Callow Avenue, he mentioned that the stove was in a location where, in a hallway, like if someone's walking, passing into the kitchen from another part of the apartment, they could knock over something on the stove. And that could be a fire hazard, and as well as, something, some other catastrophic thing. And it's a dangerous situation. So I highlight that because in my house, for example, we don't have, our electric isn't up to code. And so we are a fire hazard to the neighborhood. And we've had a fire already in this property. So it's not just simply an issue of, I want to rat out my neighbor. Or I don't like my neighbor, or my neighbor doesn't like me because they called in 311. This stuff is life-saving, okay? And so if somebody is doing unpermitted work, it's going to impact, there's a substantial chance that they could impact the entire neighborhood. And we really don't want that or need it. There are, neighbors who, for example, don't take their garbage out. And other neighbors have been taking the garbage out for pickup on Fridays. The problem is that having the trash scattered in your yard, you're going to have a rat issue. But it's not going to just be limited to your area. And we know this. And we know this in Baltimore. So putting in a 311 call on that should be a public health issue. It's not personal. It's, we're community. And so we have to think in terms of the community, and not to lecture anyone. And I certainly never envisioned being in this position, but these are safety issues. These regulations, these bylaws exist for the good of the community. So if somebody's doing unpermitted work and you see it, you should call, because there could be unpermitted work that you don't see that could impact you and the rest of the community. So that's just kind of the light that I'd like you to look into, because these homes are attached to one another. We're attached to one another. We should be thinking in terms of this community and how work will impact, anything that anyone does. I need to replace doors on my property because they aren't properly made and they're not properly fitted. And so because they're exterior, I got to go through CHAP. Do I want to pay those fees? Not really, but I'm going to, okay? Because that's what legally I'm obligated to do. So these aren't small matters. We have kids, we have elderly in the community. We need to be looking out. This is the bare minimum we could do for each other in the neighborhood. And again, like, this is not something that or a position I'd ever thought I'd be in. I'm not trying to lecture. I'm just saying we need to be safe. We need to be concerned about what's, going on. We don't want, fire hazards, for example, in the neighborhood. Baltimore City has enough issues with that. We don't need to have it right here. So I just want to throw that out. I just want people to know that it isn't, it's not personal. These are requirements, and they're requirements for a reason, because it keeps us safe. And we all have an interest in making sure that we're safe and that the community is safe. So, calling in 311 again is life-saving. So I'm hoping that more people will feel comfortable with it, because that's what looking out for your neighbors, that's a big component of it, and that's what it's really about. So I just wanted to say that. And I think, and I mentioned just the one last thing with respect to the Amtrak meetings, and Amtrak itself. Again, we've requested that they stop all of the construction activity. That was a request that was made to Department of Transportation. We don't have anything back from them, but we are going to follow up with them on that. There's certainly a very strong argument that given all of the issues with the project itself, that we would certainly hope that would be, putting it on hold would probably be the most equitable thing until it's resolved. But again, because these things take years sometimes, and in fact, most times, I don't know if they're just simply, it's a case of them simply ignoring us, but we're certainly going to follow up with that and make sure that we communicate what we learn with you all. And if there are any questions, please feel free to ask them now. And if not, back to you, Chad.
Hey Lisa, I had a question about the demolition of the property that was on Linden and North Avenue. My understanding was that that property had historical elements and the demolition of it was against the law. So if that is true, that's one thing. The second thing would be who enforces that and would give some sort of consequence to Amtrak for doing that. 'Cause I think that seems like a next step. I know you mentioned that there's a request for them to stop doing work, but are there any actions that can be taken to, like, I don't know, a hearing in front of a judge to actually make them be ordered to stop?
Great questions. The first one with respect to the historical elements in a property, such as the ones that were, on the register, or even for ones that aren't on the National Register. There are specific protocols which include, speaking with the community. Like there's a protocol, for example, if you're removing anything that falls into the area of historic significance, you're supposed to remove those items with, once, that's assuming everything else you've talked to the community, you have some sort of agreement with everybody who is adversely impacted. And so you have to, because the community is entitled to keep those artifacts or items. And so there's a process for requesting that and making sure that it's preserved. So you can't just take out whatever you want and just toss it away. We're worried that, for example, some things in the building, may be used for other parts of, or other buildings in Baltimore City. We don't know. We don't know if these items have been sold even because of the improper removal. So with respect to your question, yeah, there are things that you can do. There's a discussion about seeking an injunction against Amtrak from continuing. That is definitely a possibility. That would be a civil court proceeding where we would go in and ask the judge to stop Amtrak. It's a very, generally, they don't like to give injunctions. And there's a very high standard to getting one. You have to prove irreparable harm and damage, etc. But I think that we do have a case for that because once you, like, for example, with the demolition of the one building, once you do that, as we say, you can't unring a rung bell. Once it's done, it's done. And so, the penalty in that case, or the appropriate action, we would argue, would be that, you can't, once you demolish it, the building is gone. And so to prevent, there's no corrective action to be taken. And so to prevent that, especially with, for example, the other building, the medical facility, that would be the argument, is that you can't demolish that building because once it's gone, it's gone. And it is of historical significance. So there's definitely, that's certainly something that's on the table in terms, because we won't be able to get real relief any other way. And so I think that's why that building is still standing, is because they know that we've raised the issues in terms of them not following proper procedure and protocol. These things aren't optional that we've raised. It's the law, and you're required to do this. As I mentioned, with respect to the construction notification, this is the first time we've gotten things door to door. And that's a requirement pretty much for Section 106. Like, you have to engage the community. You have to knock on doors. You have to go to places of worship. You have to hand out flyers. Community engagement has to be meaningful. And that's a requirement. That's not optional. So, for example, when Amtrak has this open house, that's not considered meaningful engagement because they're not going to present anything. They probably won't even answer questions. And so when you're talking about the fact that we have to stop them or prevent them at this point from taking these steps, we're doing that because ultimately there won't be any real relief if they move forward with it. And I see Tiandra has her hand up, so I'm gonna let her ask her or say what she has to say as well. But I think that she wants to weigh in on your question.
Okay, I'm gonna try my hardest to say this without coughing. But a thing I just wanted to raise with you, Darnell, too, it's gonna be, we have kind of a few hurdles for the community. So we have one of the hurdles for our community is just understanding for everyone in our community to truly understand that we live in a historic neighborhood that's federally recognized as historic. Because I think a lot of us kind of have been, we understand what historic preservation means from the city level a little bit, where we're like, oh, it means you can't paint your house a certain way, or you have to do an extra step. And I think there's going to be a lot of work for our community to understand what is historic preservation as a tool for our own empowerment and protection. And I think that's going to take a lot more work, because I think people, and rightly so, in a lot of ways, see historic preservation as a tool of, I don't want to say oppression, that sounds so extreme, but kind of like a tool to suppress people or to mandate people to do things, or it feels like, you know, rules, just endless rules to make your life harder. And I think that our experiences in the city, right or wrong, have led a lot of people to view historic preservation in that way. But I think as a community, we really need to start seeing it as a way to, yeah, restrictive. Thank you, Daryl. As a really restrictive, as historic preservation as a restraint to your freedom. And I think that instead, we need to see our community as that being part of our value as in our community, and really thinking closely, like when you travel through the city and you're in a neighborhood that you're kind of like, wow, this is a really nice neighborhood. And it, for some reason, it just feels really nice here. What are the kind of details that are preserved in those neighborhoods that make you feel that way? And maybe some of those things are bad, right? Like some of those have bad historic, are due to very horrible historic things. And also it has allowed people to have a quality of life in their communities that tend towards a little bit of a higher standard than what has happened in our communities. And so what I've seen in Reservoir Hill is oftentimes we see the penalty part of historic preservation, but we never get to see the privilege part of historic preservation. So we get charged more, we pay into the taxes for historic preservation, and we are penalized if we don't follow the rules. But when it comes to respecting our community and ensuring that things aren't taking out of our community that should be there, or replacing them properly, or ensuring that our streets are respected and our sidewalks are respected, and that our homes are maintained, we don't get that part of it. And so that's kind of like the muscle that we're going to have to build over time for the city to understand that we have that expectation, because on the city, state, and federal level, they have never had to really do that with us. And thankfully, a lot of people in our community actually have done that work for a really long time. We're not the first, but I think it's going to take some time for us to build on that. And I just wanted, if it's okay, sorry, I failed. If it's okay, I just wanted to show really quickly an example, which I think I sounded kind of crazy on this call about Druid Park Lake Drive, because I was like going on and on about these gates, and probably everyone was like, this woman, like, who cares about these gates? And people said that too about, you know, North Avenue and the building coming down. They were like, who cares about that building, right? But because when, and I don't know how else to say this, but I feel like living in a community that has been majority Black for a long time, I have noticed there's a default belief that there is nothing worth preserving in our communities. And oftentimes when you bring up that something is historic and needs to be preserved, it's framed as if you're being either NIMBY or overstating a case. And so I think part of it too will be our own education, understanding what is historic in our community. what historic things happened in our community, who lived here, what did they do? And I can't actually share my screen, but I wanted, so on that call with Druid Park Lake Drive, I was going on about these gates that are on Utah Place. And they kept telling me the gates were never in your community. They were actually on the other side. So I had to go to the archive. And here are the gates, the original gates. They were always in our community. And I can show in other images that illustrate it even better, but this just shows you how close into the park our community really was and how they created Druid Park Lake Drive as a highway to separate us out. And I think it's hard to really understand it without the pictures to actually see it. But the city was really pushing to move and is continuing to push to move these gates out of our community to the other side of the street. Now that might be like, who cares? Like, you don't own these gates. We didn't build them. They were here, whatever. Sorry, I'm going to stop sharing. But the thing is, it's a resource that our community actually raised money to build, and they belong to our community, and our community donated it to the city. And our community including the Madison Park Gate, our community raised money to build those. And so we need to know that history, because moving a gate like this would never be proposed in another community, especially historically white community. They would never go into Roland Park and suggest that they remove something like this from their community and move it into a public space. It just would never happen. But that's something that happens every day. And there's so many examples, maybe when you do a walk, when you go on your daily walk, or you walk your dog, or you hang out with your friends, you'll notice, you're like, oh, something was supposed to be there, because they've literally gone through our community and picked it apart and pulled things out that they didn't think we deserved. And it's a pattern. And I think that although it might feel uncomfortable to do this and advocate for preservation in our community, it's piece by piece that they take things out. And it might seem small to fight over a gate, who cares about a gate? I get it. But it's not small, because over time, this sounds so dramatic, but it starts with something like this. Next thing you know, a building is taken down, then this is taken, and this is taken, a fountain is disassembled, a park is removed, and then you end up with a bunch of empty lots, and then they say, oh, your community, it's blighted. Why not put a train through it? And that's how they do it. That's how they build that argument of blight, is by piece, knocking things down, pulling them out, and ripping apart the resources from community, and then telling you to your face there's nothing there, as if they didn't play a part in doing that. And so I just hope that you all can bear with us, because it might seem from the outside, wow, they're really nitpicking, and why do they care about all these really small, silly things? But it's that in total, when all of these things happen over a period of 50, 60 years, that's how they tell you. And I'm going to show you just one more picture. They're going to tell you that there was never anything on North Avenue. They're going to tell you that that it was always blighted. But guess what? This is North Avenue in Linden. This is North Avenue in Linden in 1920. Right? So it happens over time that they make an argument for blight within our communities, and we have to push back, because it's through allowing this to happen, and it's almost incomprehensible, but except for the sign that says Linden Avenue right there, it's almost incomprehensible that this is Linden Avenue, but it is, right? So that's all I wanted to share, and we'll share all these things on our website so you guys can see all the documents of what our community looked like in the past and how it's changed over time. But we're trying to approach this in that way of it feels uncomfortable for us to do this work, because, a lot of us are I don't want to nitpick on, a pillar here, a pillar there, or someone's house color, or whether someone's painting their brick or taking this out. But it's that all of these things add up to how they're able to make this argument that there is nothing here worth saving. And that is how they make arguments through putting tunnels through our community. That's how it happens. So that's my little box. I'm going to step down from my box.
Can I say thank you to our resident historian? Because I certainly could never have said that as well as you did. That is critical information. Like these artifacts, this history belongs in the community. So even if you feel like, as Keandra said, oh, it's a gate, who cares? Or if it's a liquor store, who cares? It's an eyesore. It belongs to the community. And what happens to those buildings, to those items with protected status, we have a say in it. And honestly, those are things that make our neighborhood the historic neighborhood that it is. And so Keandra brings up this excellent point. If you let them take out all that makes up your neighborhood, then they're free to do whatever they want to your neighborhood. And so we have protected status and we really need to exercise it. And the fact that we were not included in decisions about properties that were in our historic district is huge. We didn't have a seat at the table to determine, what they did with that building. It was just, they decided that it was necessary for this project and they took it down. And what they plan to do is say, oh, well, it's already done. It's gone, and so we need to move forward because the building is gone. And we're sort of like the actions that we've taken is, like hold on, not so fast. There were laws that were broken, and this is the way that we're going to hold Amtrak and anyone else accountable who comes into our neighborhood and decides to remove these items for whatever reason. So I hope that answers the question, Darnell. Everything is on the table. There are ways to hold Amtrak accountable for taking, removing items, knocking buildings down, historic buildings that are nationally recognized. There are ways, and everything is still on the table.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Lisa, and also what you shared, Keandra. I think for me, I've kind of followed like the past year or 18 months of the back and forth with Amtrak, but it's important to always kind of keep up with the latest and just refresh like my vocabulary or like how I phrase things when I'm engaging with developers or other stakeholders in our community or dealing with West Baltimore in general. So that's super helpful. And last question, I know we have like specific meetings to talk about Amtrak. When is that next meeting going to be?
I think it's every other Wednesday. There's a working group. Keandra can correct me, or Melda, if you know. I think it's every other Wednesday. And we actually do have an email if you're, for you to sign up for the BP Tunnel Working Group, which is really a really active group, and it can keep you updated with everything that's going on with Amtrak and with the community in terms of construction, et cetera, because this all impacts us. And, if, there's dust in the air, if they're not taking the environmental impact of destroying the building, if they haven't given proper notification, I'm asthmatic, there are other people that would need, it shouldn't just be floating in the air. And so there is, a plan to file a complaint with the EPA with respect to how they destroyed the building, but didn't take the proper protections or follow the protocol in destroying the building. And in terms of any future construction work, we do need notifications. Not just for the traffic issues, but also the environmental issues. We should be on full notice if they're going to do something during a specific part of the day. The community needs to be fully aware of that as well. And so we are taking those steps. The BP working group is a wonderful place to get that information and keep up to date with what's going on in terms of that, in terms of this project. I see a hand. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, hi, this is Janae. Just one more thing. The meetings, all of the committee meetings are also on our calendar on our website. And so we'll update, I guess maybe work with the chair for the BMP Tunnel Working Group to see about removing the one for tomorrow to make sure that it's up to date so that people can attend the Amtrak meeting.
We got a question from Bradford. Go ahead.
Hey, how you guys doing? Does anyone show up to the investor meetings that are happening throughout the city that are happening weekly? There was a huge investor summit. I didn't see anyone from the organization there, but I attend them all. And these are the major investment meetings. And Longi Rosa was there, who is the vice president of Amtrak, as well as the president's office. The White House was present, and they gave a full plan and visual of what their plans were, and they were getting buy-in. And I go to these investment meetings almost every week, and their strategic way that they're getting approval is they're allowing individuals to solicit what they want at every single meeting. So they're getting community buy-in from all of Baltimore City on what they want. And the number one topic is transportation. And they're making sure they're circling back on there. So I know just yesterday, they had Baltimore Rise. And one of the things that we're focusing on is how we can better transportation, bringing others into Baltimore. And this is a huge topic, not just in our community, but throughout the entire city. And the main focus of this investment summit was how they can get more investment and how much of an investment was committed to bringing this in. And they had to buy in for quite a few CEOs from Fortune 1000 companies. There was over 600 of them there. And the buy-in is focused mainly on this. So I'm not sure if we are representing ourselves in those meetings. I attend them, but I don't see anyone else. I'm not on the board here, but I don't see anyone else that attends these meetings.
And how did you get notification of these meetings?
They're online. They're on the mayor's office. Great. GBC leads a lot of the meetings. So if you guys are following GBC Investment Summit, theirs was just June 27th. It was the biggest investment meeting in Baltimore by far that I've ever seen.
Thank you.
But they're usually on the mayor's office website, and then GBC posts them as well because GBC has been leading the drive for this. But the White House was just here, and they were all speaking on this train, where it's going, and they were soliciting feedback from thousands in the crowd. And they not only do they get it in writing, they put boards up every single one of these meetings, and they're soliciting so much information. So if we want to win, it has to be a collective effort from the neighborhood, and you have to be present at every single one of the meetings because everyone's CEO was there, CEOs, vice presidents, and it was the time to voice all of the objections and opinions is in these larger meetings because all the investors are coming in, and the more money that comes in, the less that we're going to be able to fight any decision we make because the dollar always wins.
Thank you very much. I'm going to try and make sure that the meetings are posted on our website.
Yeah, thank you, Bradford, because honestly, we didn't know this meeting happened. No one told us. This is the first time anyone has ever told us about this meeting. So just assume we don't know if we're not there, truthfully.
we're happy to show up. And I think the point is well taken that it's going to take a community effort, because what you described seems like, the city is just being sold off to the highest bidder. So you could just come on in and, do what you want and Baltimore City does have that reputation, that, for in terms of investors, developers, they can just come on in and do what you want, and the law be damned, neighborhoods be damned, communities be damned. So I think, because look, even if you disagree with elements of, what we're doing, your property values are at play. Your neighborhood safety, if you have children, is at play. Your children's safety, for example, if they attend Dorothy L. Heights, is at play. This community is entitled to have a say. Okay, we want our neighborhood to be a livable neighborhood, a livable community. We don't even have a grocery store, but we have, plans for a train station. And I see Kathy has her hands up and wants to weigh in.
Did I hear someone say a minute ago that there won't be a BNP Tunnel Working Group meeting tomorrow because there's an Amtrak meeting?
I think that was in response. I think Janae said that in response to me incorrectly initially saying that I thought it was July 11th, the Amtrak meeting. So we know that it is, I think we put the dates up, the 22nd and the 24th. So there will be, as far as I know, a working group meeting is for Wednesday. Yes, tomorrow.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for clearing that up, just in case somebody else didn't see that or
I
hear
did.
that as well.
I did record some video. I didn't get a whole lot because I was doing them through my glasses, and I can see if I can put them on our server and create some links so you guys can see some of the things that they discussed. They didn't allow people to come up and speak, but they did have breakouts where you're able to talk to all the CEOs. But at least you can see some of the presentations, and the presentations. I mean, they were broad and wide span, and if you go to the website, they may have some there, but it'll show you a list of every single speaker, from the mayor being there, the governor, the senator, everyone was there. So everyone was present, but I did record quite a bit that I thought would be beneficial for the community, but I don't really know what to say and what some of the goals are because I haven't been present, unfortunately.
Well, we thank you so much for that, because we could really use that information. We know this is an uphill battle. This is a pet project, okay, for the Biden administration. We get that. Whenever I've talked to the Maryland Historic Trust, when I've talked to the Advisory Council for Historic Preservation, whose function is to oversee the Section 106 project, what the Section 106 concerns, I'm always met with, well, it's a done deal. Even with Senator Van Hollen's office, one of the issues raised was, this was decided, several years ago. And basically, it's, people are going to say it's a done deal. And of course, my response was, we weren't at the table. The law wasn't followed. It's not a done deal because we just didn't participate. We weren't advised. Okay. And so we weren't allowed at the table. And the law, if it's to mean anything at all, and I get the time that we're in, that's questionable right now. But it's what we have. And I mean, we need to be able to say, and I know they're proceeding as if it's, a done deal, but it's actually not. no matter how much money is flowing in and the level at which the project is being pushed. I know the governor wants it. The mayor, everybody has basically made it very clear that they're going to, support it no matter what, but they're not impacted in the way that we are. So if we want to have a say in what goes on in our community, we have to act with respect to this project. Otherwise, they can do whatever they want, because that means that the law doesn't mean anything, historic preservation doesn't mean anything, your community doesn't have a right to advocate for your community members, your residents, your stakeholders, your homeowners, your renters. It's going to be us. And if you want to keep the neighborhood going in the positive direction, that it's shown the potential to be, we need to be involved, and we need to advocate fiercely, because our lives literally depend on this. And Keandra is I think has a question or a response.
Yeah, I was just going to quickly reiterate, thank you so much for sharing that, Bradford. And I just also want to make it clear, we're just neighbors and volunteers. So if you see something like that where Amtrak is going to be present and you feel like our presence should be heard or felt, please just email and share that with us, or text us, or, reach out, because we don't know everything. And then the other part I would like to say is I always encourage you all just to remember that Reservoir Hill Association is just neighbors, right? So you don't have to feel like you can't say, as a member of RHA, Reservoir Hill opposes this, because you know how your neighbors feel. So if you ever feel comfortable, if you're the lone person in that situation, you feel comfortable voicing that, I think us as neighbors would feel very proud and happy for you to do so. So never feel like, well, I'm not on the board of RHA, or I'm not a technical member. If you have knowledge of our position on something like the tunnel, where we're, actively advocating for something, never feel like you have to not share that. I'm a member of RHA. Every single one of you are probably members. If you filled out the form online, you're a member. I'm a member of RHA, and I want to share how the community feels on this topic, because while, we try to be as many places as possible, again, we are volunteers and just your neighbors. We can't be at everything. But I just want to make that super clear for anyone on the call. Please feel empowered as a member, as a neighbor, as someone that, knows about the issue. Share what you know, because sometimes you might be that only voice, but that one voice might be the one that's needed in that moment. So never feel like you're not able to do that. So I just, thank you for sharing. Please do share. And also, you're a member, feel empowered to use your voice in those moments as well.
Thank you for that, Keandra. I think that's all we have, unless there are other questions on this. So I'm going to pass it back to Chet for, I guess, anything else that we need to do or talk about.
I think that's all I know of. If there aren't any other questions, we can end the meeting. Anybody out there? Oh, I did want to mention also with a 311, it's not just complaints about houses. The city allocates resources based on 311. I'll call it complaint reports. If you see sidewalk trees are pushing up a sidewalk, that's a trip hazard. If you see a leaky water meter that was on Brookfield last week, and probably is still, And any sort of issues that the city should be aware of, report them on 311, because one thing could become 6 items that the city looks at because the inspector is there or DPW is there. And they will look at that kind of stuff. We have, I don't know if this is a result of the trip hazard sidewalk on Bolton Street, but Bolton Street is getting curbs reconstructed this week. And I think a new curb cut on one of the corners. Don't know how it happened, but it could be that the city was out looking at something and for 311 and said, hey, this needs to be addressed, and they're doing it. So, yeah, use 311 as much as you can for stuff in the neighborhood. And if there's nothing else, we can end the meeting. And thank you everybody for coming. And hope everyone has a great night.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thanks, everyone.
Night.
Feel better.
Thank you.
Mhm. Okay, good night.
Thank you all.
Night.